Welcome back to the library, dear wanderers. Today we're going to head back to Library Wing 1, the Hidden Nest, back to the first Oaks shelf, where we'll pick up the first work we see. This one is a short poem, brought to the library by Pentagon. Now without further ado, they see right through you. You've made it, at last. Years of overcome challenge, just diversity, endless nights up late. Nobody cares about that. Headaches, hunger, pain, because you don't fit. Books and tools and strategies, you're finally here. What do you matter? Why would they care about you? You look around slow. They see right through you. You shuffle through the silence and take the last seat. They barely notice. They're all nervous, just like you. They're only human. But are you? And with that lovely little poem, we move on to the next work. This one, another page from the Journal of Aphromoss Long Journey, brought to us by Dr. Everett Mann. Now without further ado, 81st turn, 7th year, 22nd cycle. Skalday. From the Journal of Aphromoss Long Journey, Pilgrim. With notes by Avos Tor, scholar of Reeve Library. Skalday, 22nd cycle, 7th year, 81st turn, 71st day in the woods. We are in a dark part of the woods today. The trees above us grow closer together, their branches intertwining to form a dense roof. And a footnote here, triple canopy rainforest from the sound of it. Occasionally glints of light from up above prove it is day, but I have to use my lamp to see. Occasionally small creatures will move near our feet too quickly for us to see just what they are. There are sounds from beyond the reach of the light, things not as large as Torn, but larger than a rabbit. They seem to be keeping their distance for now. You're probably curious. Still, it is disquieting to hear these things, but not to see them. Even with the light from the lantern, there is a little I can tell about our surroundings. It is like being in a cave or an unlit building. The trees around us are covered by a thick, leprous-seeming fungus. Ropey white strings fall from the trees like hairs. Mushrooms of all kinds are evident. The cloying smell of rotten leaves is almost overwhelming. Long worm-like creatures occasionally move through the leaf litter. I thought they were snakes the first time I saw them, but they are covered in thick slime and far too flexible to be serpents. Their bodies are long and black, with small white feelers at one end. And another footnote here. Numbworms. Petacus torpius. A small but very dangerous creature that prefers to live in damp caves and particularly dense stretches of forest. One coiled around Torn's ankle, and he nearly fell over trying to get it off. The slime numbed his skin, and it was an hour before he had full feeling in his foot again. His trousers are now tucked into his boots. Fortunately, my scales seem to provide some defense against them. That, or perhaps I am not susceptible to their poison. We are sleeping in a hollow formed by two trees that fell against each other. We cleared the ground of leaves and set up our camp. We will both be watching carefully tonight. There's no telling what might find us here. And we have one last reading for today. Pokemon Prime brought this one to the library. Without further ado, a hop's thoughts on the brewing process. The process of being made into beer was so benign it was near maddening. A childhood spent growing in the fields wasn't exactly a thrill-seeker's day out, to be sure, but it was at least what a plant was intended to do. Sit in the ground as a small seed, germinate, and slowly grow your way into a fully developed plant. With any luck, you'd spread seeds of your own, and your duty in life would be done, and you could wither away into old age and rot into the soil below a happy plant. Of course, such a simple, content life was rarely possible for farmland plant like himself. You were modified over decades not to produce better, but to grow better. Grow, 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 all other functions be damned. Some of you and your ilk may not even put out seeds anymore. Modern science could replicate plants from almost any offcut of themselves that was bigger than a pinprick, but that was ultimately besides the point. The biggest insult in your mind was you were not even allowed a calm ending. Sure, plenty of your brethren ended up eaten by passing animals. Maybe rarely they drowned or died of dehydration or suffered some form of pestilence when conditions worked against them, but the vast majority simply wilted as they reached the end of their natural lives, and then their body gave back to the soil below as your nutrients went back into the earth from which they came. However, such a life was not for you. Your unlucky soul. Or, well, whatever you have, you're not entirely sure if plants do have souls in a traditional sense. Your end came when the great growling metallic beasts came, constructed of iron and steel, powered by engines of internalized explosions that rattled your very core with their noise. You fell through the air, though collapsed was probably the better word, into a bed of wood and metal, and from there you were swapped from place to place, from truck bed to storage pile, from pallet to tractor trailer, from shipping container to pre-processing storage tanks. All of this effort, all of this industrial might for such a disappointing end. For the simple fact was that your cursed self didn't even possess the luck to grow in a farm of any prestige, of a farm that supplied tens of thousands of tons of your kind to the highest quality of beverage manufacturers. No, you and your friends supplied a manufacturer of the lowest, cheapest swill, the kind of vile, pale, watery liquid that even the drunkest young man would hazard to down. That they even managed to accomplish this brew, this foul, did not appear by accident or even by lack of skill, but make millions off the practice as well was perhaps the world's cruelest and most unjust of jokes as far as you could be concerned. However, your concern didn't stretch far. For all your ramblings, you were simply one of millions of hops grown around the globe every year. Your words never reached the mind of another being, not to speak of the written or spoken word where they may do some good. So after a while, your mind retreated to simple, quiet anger and spite as you went through the twisting and surprisingly intricate industrial processes that were amazingly all required to produce cheap swill on such a monstrous scale. With the production done, you entered again into a familiar routine of swapping from box to pallet to shipping container to transport truck and now finally to the shelves of a small grocery store, really a glorified convenience store, in some doldrum small town out in the hills. Your anger still persisted, though it had faded further to more of a dull, passive angeriness as your thoughts continued to stew and work themselves through. There was little else to do after counting the tiles and the number of cracks in the ceiling for the 100th time. Finally, on a day abnormal only for the fact it hadn't recently rained. You couldn't see outside, but the humidity had subsided to the point where the rain at least wasn't fresh, that much you could tell. A young man strolled in, looked down the aisles with more of an excited step than the store's usual worn-out patrons. He scanned the shelves, mumbling something under his breath, and grabbed the case you had been packaged into with one hand, grunting as he realized a case of 24 was quite heavier than he had expected. Now in an awkward carry, he lugged the case to the front of the store, handing some fresh, crisp-looking bills to the cashier, and then reenacted the awkward carry back out to his car. You felt strange at this. There was a faint optimism in the air that had been long absent before. A loose gravel from the cheap, crumbling pavement sporadically kicked out from under the car as it bumped down the winding road. You almost felt a bit joyful, enough to push out the thoughts of how unpleasant being drank would feel. The car rolled to a stop, and noise could be heard from just outside its thin sheet metal walls. People talking and laughing, shouting and joking in a manner only describable as jubilant. The twinge of optimism you felt as you left the shop had morphed into an anxious joy at what was to come, and this feeling only strengthened as the door swung open and the man again lugged the case around as gracefully as a sack of rocks. The noise was almost deafening now, music emanating from a far corner of the yard, and people talking loudly to be heard over it. The case you were resting in was dropped onto a table that quietly shook under the newfound weight, and soon cans were being handed out to men and women alike. As you were tossed to a young man with messy hair and a bright t-shirt, a good description of most in attendance actually, you were filled with almost nothing but joy. Maybe this life, which you had cursed so thoroughly in your younger days as a simple farm plant, was not so bad after all. Maybe this was a fulfilling, content life to be found, even in a life so far removed from the natural one you idealized. Perhaps the life of a cheap swill beer had some business to it, far from benign. And with that, we've reached the end of our readings, dear wanderers. Thank you very much for coming. Apologies for the lateness of this all. My family has come home from an extended trip to other countries, which means I immediately got a sore throat, which was lovely. But, yeah, thank you very much for coming. Good luck out there, and I hope to see you all next time.